Alright, hello everybody, welcome back to another virtual MOSI. My name is Mark and I will be your instructor for today. We are going to be learning a little bit about document analysis. But before we delve into that, I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions throughout our live stream today, please be sure to type it in the comment section below. I do not have it in front of me, so we do have my wonderful coworker Steven answering questions behind the scene, and my other coworker Ian, who's going to be videotaping me today. So be sure to ask any questions below, and they'll either answer them via typing or they'll sound them out loud to me before we begin. So this week has been all about forensics. On Monday we did a little bit of fingerprinting, and then yesterday we did a little bit of chromatography. Today we're going to delve a little bit into the world of document analysis. Now, document analysis is essentially when, in a forensic case, there is a document that is pulled into question, something like a ransom note or a sinister letter or something like that. And document analysis are going to compare that letter or that note with another known source from a suspect, known as an exemplar. And so this is a wonderful job, and this has become part of our court system. In 1999, the United States Court of Appeals officially allowed it to be brought in as expert testimony. And so expert testimony essentially falls along three pillars. The first one is going to be acceptance. Now, acceptance essentially means that this expert has to be accepted by the wider scientific community, but also that the information that he's giving is also accepted by the relevant professionals. Not only does it have to be accepted, both the expert and what he's saying, but it also has to be relevant. And so what that means is that the expert itself has to have relevant information or knowledge or skills or training. And document analysis are actually credited, I'm going to read this because I don't want to forget it, they're accredited by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. And that is the board that allows these experts to get their certifications in document analysis. So if you are accredited through that organization, you do have the relevant experience to be an expert testimony. And then the final one is going to be reliability. What that means is when the U.S. Court of Appeals is pulling an expert testimony, the reliability essentially means that this is something that can be peer-reviewed or can be repeated, right? And so document analysis was able to check all three of these boxes back in 1999. It first actually exploded into the United States culture during Charles Lindbergh's child who was kidnapped. They were using document analysis on the ransom notes that they got, and were trying to compare it to the various suspects. But document analysis works for a couple of reasons. First, because each individual has their own unique style of writing. When we're kids and going through primary school and stuff like that, everybody learns all 26 letters. They learn how to write them. They learn proper grammar structure and punctuation. But depending on when you learned how to write or where you learned how to write, it could alter the way that you physically write. But also, as you're going through life, different things will change the way that you write. And so depending on, if you were going through school and you were not the quickest writer, your handwriting might have become a little bit more sloppy over time because you're trying to catch up with the words that were being said. Versus if you're somebody who took their time and were a little bit neater, that is going to be something that continues with you throughout your life. So there's a myriad of different factors that change how you write, how you capitalize, how you punctuate, even your own grammar structure. And those are all things that are taken into account while you are doing document analysis.
Oh, Mr. Mark, there's
Yes.
a question. Is that how they find kidnappers?
So this is one of the ways that this is one of the parts of data that's collected that could potentially lead to that. If they're handwritten notes, Then if you're able to grab an exemplar, which say you have a handwritten note and you have a suspect in mind that kept a diary, you're able to take that handwritten note and compare different features of that note to the suspect's diary. And now document experts, they can't say for certain that the person who wrote it is the person who committed the crime, but they can go out and say, well, these are the 5 hallmarks that both of these share, and we can reasonably assume that these 2 pieces of information, these 2 documents have the same author. And we'll talk about what hallmarks those are in just a couple minutes. But that is also a wonderful question, because if somebody who's writing a ransom note with their hand, they might know that it's going to be, compared to their own writing, so they'll change up the way they write. That's why in a lot of media, ransom notes have magazine clippings to spell out words, because then it's not them using their own handwriting, which a document analysis might be able to pick up on. Because even if we try our best to change the way that we write, the way that we write is ingrained in our, our ability and our routine. And so knowing that somebody might be looking at your writing could change the way that you write. Also, depending on how quickly you're writing or what surface you're writing upon, can also change the pressure, and depending on what type of pen you're using, it could dribble ink between the 2 letters and stuff like that. So it is part of the evidence, and in a lot of cases you build up a whole bunch of evidence. Not a lot of times it's one singular evidence that makes the whole case, but it's a whole bunch of stuff because it's beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so that was a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. I hope that answered your question. Feel free to comment again if you have any follow-ups. So document analysis is going to be used in courtrooms. We all have our own individual writing style. And so if you guys don't believe me, I'm sure there's probably at least one other person in your home maybe watching this live stream with you. Or if not, you can ask a friend to send a picture. Think of a simple sentence, something like MOSI is cool, or I really like science, and write it out on a lined sheet of paper, and have somebody else in your household or one of your friends write that same exact sentence. Now, even though you'll most likely be able to read their sentence, even if they don't really have the best handwriting, it still uses the same 26 characters of the English alphabet. It will tell you the same information, but it will look different. And that's because of a person's environment affecting the way that they write. Wonderful. So, expert testimony has to follow these 3 pillars: acceptance, relevance, and reliability, right? But what does that mean when it comes to, sorry, lost my eraser. What does that mean when it comes to actual document analysis? So there's a whole bunch of different things that document experts are going to be looking at when they're comparing 2 different writing samples. The first is going to be size. So lined paper is pretty ubiquitous in our society. Everybody writes on it. And so all of our lines are pretty uniform. What that means for us as a populace means that as we write, our writing tends to be a similar size. And so depending on how large you make your capitals versus how high the top of your E is from the bottom of line is going to be relatively consistent as you're writing. Because again, it's going to be muscle memory. We don't necessarily really have to think as we're writing as much as we just kind of write what we want, right? But size consistency is going to be something that document analysis are going to look at. The second is going to be the slope. Now, slope can come from a myriad of different things. It can come from the way you hold your pen. It can be the way that you tilt your paper as you write, or how you hold your paper, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. And that essentially means the slope that your letters are going through. So if we have, I'm going to continue using an S since we have 2 S's here, and we have science learning today. If we have an S and your letter is sloped, when you draw a line through, I know it kind of looks like money, but if you draw a line through the center axis, you can see how the letter is going to be sloped versus if you write up and down. Now, me personally, I normally write with a little bit of slope, but like I was mentioning earlier, different situations require different writing. Because I'm writing for you guys at home to be able to read this properly, I'm writing more upright, and I'm also writing a little bit larger than I normally would. So we have the size of the letter, we have the slope of the letter. The next one is going to be spacing. So spacing essentially means the space not only between letters but also between words. I know when I was a kid and growing up, I learned that you put 1 finger's width of space in between the end of a word and the start of the next one, right? Depending on how you turned out and how life went, you might have more or less spacing between your words now than when you learned. But that spacing is still ingrained in us, and it's going to be part of the pattern that we repeat. Currently, I checked today, I have a wonderful handwritten sheet, and my space is about half of a pinky width now between my words, and I checked, and I can actually show you guys at home if you really, really want, and it's pretty consistent across the board with how much space is between my letters, and you can kind of see the slope there for me as well. And this is going to be the lesson plan I have for you guys today. So we have the spacing of the letters, we have the spacing of the words, right? And that is going to be something, again, part of a pattern. And this is really what document analysis are looking for. They're looking for patterns in writing that will match 2 people together, right? We have spacing, we have slope, we have size. The next is going to be print or script. Aha, that's a script. I don't really normally write in script, so you can see I'm not as accurate with it, and it's kind of hard to read, right? But my print is fine. And that is something, even though I learned cursive when I was in, I think, 3rd grade, it's not something I've continuously kept up with, so mine's a little bit sloppy, right? But depending on how you write, it could also be part of that pattern. For me personally, when I write the word the, I'll write it nice and big for you, I always make a cursive E at the end. And that kind of hybrid, and all of my words the, is going to be a pattern that somebody like a document analysis would look at if I was the subject of a criminal investigation, right? So we have print script, we have the size, slope, spacing. Next, we're going to look at something called line habits. So, line habits, like I mentioned earlier, line paper is ubiquitous in our society, and there's all these wonderful lines while we're writing, and depending on where on those lines, or above or below those lines you normally write, that's going to be a pattern as well. So if you have any old notes or letters or something lying around on line paper, see if you can find them, and see if you can see what your line habit is, and even all these, right? I know for me, I hover directly above the line. I don't write on the line. The only time I cross the line is when I do my Y's or my Q's or my G's or my P's, right? And so line habits, again, because line paper is so ubiquitous, is going to be another pattern that we see throughout a lot of documents. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is going to be special characteristics. So, special characteristics are things that stick out that are unique to you. So, looking at my wonderful writing that I have here, I want to point out a couple of different things. And I'll use not purple, we use a red that is a little bit, let's see which one's more vibrant here. So we'll use this red. So if you want to, I don't know if you can still see that, Mr. Ian. For special characteristics, I want to point out a couple of things. For me particular, my last name starts with an S, so because I write it so often, if we look at all my S's, you can see that there's this little hook here. And that's something that's unique to the way I write my S. So you can see that hook here, and then here as well. And then, I know I kind of over-circled it, but my P's as well, right here, they kind of have, when I do my lowercase p's, they kind of look a little bit like this. Because I go down and then I come back up and around. Now, document analysis, these are just kind of the basic things that they look at, but they also look at stuff like pen lifts. So if you write a P like this versus writing a P like that, that's going to be two separate patterns that they would look for, right? Not to mention they could also look for pen pressure, type of ink used. We talked a little bit about chromatography yesterday. If they find certain types of pens in a suspect's house, they can test that type of chromatography to the letter in question, all that fun stuff. And again, this is just going to be one part of the criminal case that is brought forth, one part of the evidence, rather, that is brought forth against people. So make sure you comment below if you have any questions. So I do want to ask you guys at home for help, because I don't know if you have noticed, but we are officially on our Moonbase colony here at MOSI, and something not so cool happened a couple days ago. Our rocket ship disappeared. And so, we're stuck up here, and normally when you are doing criminal cases like this, you get second opinions and expert testimonies and stuff, but we're kind of, stuck up here because our rocket is gone. So I actually need you guys at home to help me out today. We're going to be taking all that we learned today, and we are actually going to be analyzing our own handmade document. Because yesterday rather, after we finished with our chromatography, my wonderful coworker Urmila was able to find this interesting note. And it looks like it was kind of damaged, like maybe somebody tried to destroy it, or maybe the moon mites that seem to live in our colony here got to it. But this is something that we were able to find. Now, we do have a couple of suspects, but because we don't have any specific names yet and not concrete enough evidence, they are still just that, suspect. And with our document analysis, we want to see if we can figure out and use the newfound knowledge that we have today to see if you guys can help us. Now, I already have an idea of which suspect I think it might be. And currently, after you guys are done with this live stream on our Facebook, we have all these uploaded in a picture form for you guys with our 4 suspects. Oh, that's a 3. Sorry, friends. Apparently I can't count. And so we have these uploaded for you guys, as well as the original image that we uploaded earlier today. And I want you guys at home to take a look. Remember to check out the spacing, to check out the size of the letters, any special characteristics, the line habits, all that stuff that we talked about today. And I want you to see if you can try to figure out who you think might have been the author of our original document. And so again, this is the document in question, and then these samples are called exemplars. And that just essentially says that these are suspects that we think might be involved, but we want to build a case against them. So I want you guys at home to check that out. Comment below that picture who you think it is, and most importantly, why. But try not to look at the comments before you do this activity, because it might skew what you think. And we want you to do it double blind. So that means that you're not getting outside information from other people that might sway what you're trying to do. Now, we also found some fibers and some hairs. And so tomorrow, my wonderful coworker Catherine will be coming in, and she will be teaching you guys a little bit about how we analyze those. And we'll be back again on Friday to give you guys a full tour of our Moonbase. Unfortunately, we didn't know that this forensic thing was going to happen on Monday, but we still have a plan, so we're still going to take you guys. Hopefully, we'll have some more info for you guys by then. But otherwise, I want to thank you guys all for tuning in.
Got a couple quick questions for you.
We have a couple quick questions.
Mr. Mark, first of all, is this how the question was about forgeries. Mm-hmm. And so how do they use this to try to determine forgeries, since you described writing styles and things of that nature?
Yeah, so it's essentially the same, because a forgery is essentially a case that you're building to prove something is or is not a forgery. And they are going to look at these exact same hallmarks. Now, normally when it comes to forgeries, it's the form of, wills and stuff like that. And so a lot of times that's based off of signatures. And so one of the things that we use a lot are checks. So you can take a look at signatures on checks, or everybody, if you have a driver's license or a passport, there's signatures to do that. And those are official documents that you can use to compare signatures to one another. Again, looking at the size, slope, spacing, all this type of stuff. Because like you guys, like your regular writing, all signatures are kind of muscle memory, and they all look the same. And depending on how quick you go, it could look a little bit different, or depending on where you're writing it. I know sometimes when I write a check, it's a little harder because I like to have the whole paper underneath me to support it. But that's essentially the same thing for forgeries. You go through all these steps to see where there are similarities, and not just where there are similarities, but where there are differences as well. If there are any unexplained differences, that's just as important as the similarities, right?
Yes. And one last question. If I wanted to become an expert in document analysis and study handwriting analysis, is there a particular school, or is there a place where I can go and learn this?
So I mentioned them at the very beginning, and I'll read the name off for you guys again. It is the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. And so that is the accrediting institution. So I'm sure if you Google them or use your favorite search engine to search them up, you will find some information about that, and it'll lead you right down the path that you're looking for. Wonderful. So again, if you guys have any other questions, we'll be on for a few more minutes typing and answering them. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in today. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 1:30, and for the next few weeks, weekdays at 1:30. Enjoy. Keep discovering.